Veteran and his dog move into lost family mansion. Secrets hidden for 60 years. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's begin. In a small, quiet town tucked away in the heart of the country, there stood an old mansion, long forgotten by most. John, a war veteran, had just moved in with his loyal dog, Scout, after inheriting the property from a distant relative. The mansion, hidden in the overgrown woods, was a relic of a time long past. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a crumbling old building, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in ivy. But to John, it was the only place left that seemed like home. He had lost so much over the years, his friends, his family, his sense of belonging. And now, this mansion, with its broken doors and dusty floors, was all he had. As John and Scout made their way through the front gate, the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and the distant sound of rustling leaves. The mansion looked abandoned, its once grand features now faded and weathered. The paint had peeled away long ago, and the roof sagged under the weight of time. Yet, there was something about it, something that drew John in. It was as if the house was calling to him, whispering secrets from a time he didn't fully understand. As they walked up the cracked stone path, Scout suddenly stopped, his ears perked and his nose twitching. John, sensing his dog's unease, knelt down and petted him gently. "What is it, boy?" he muttered, his voice carrying an edge of curiosity. Scout didn't bark, but he didn't need to. His posture was stiff, his gaze locked onto the front door as if something was waiting for them inside. John felt a chill run down his spine, but he shook it off. He had faced danger before, both in the war and in life. This was different, though. The mansion felt alive. They entered through the front door, which creaked on its hinges, as if protesting their arrival. The interior was dark, the only light coming from the dust-covered windows. The air smelled stale, a mixture of old wood and mildew. John took a deep breath and stepped further inside, his boots scraping against the hardwood floors. Scout followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the shadows. As they explored, John's curiosity grew. The house, despite its age and disrepair, had a certain charm to it. There were relics of the past everywhere. Old furniture covered in sheets, faded photographs on the walls, and the faintest hint of perfume lingering in the air. But it wasn't just the house that intrigued John. It was the feeling that something was hidden here, something important. He couldn't explain it, but every room he entered felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for him to discover its secret. Scout seemed to sense it too, his movements more cautious now, his eyes darting toward dark corners and empty hallways. As they reached the library at the back of the house, John noticed something odd. A book was missing from one of the shelves. In its place was a small, dusty key. Without thinking, he picked it up, feeling the weight of it in his palm. It was old, the metal tarnished and the teeth worn down with age. John's heart raced. Was this the key to the mansion's secret? He had no idea, but one thing was certain. He was about to find out. As John stood there, holding the small, tarnished key in his hand, a sense of urgency gripped him. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, the house now quieter than before, as if it too was waiting for him to make his move. Scout, still by his side, let out a low growl and his ears perked up, as though sensing something he couldn't. The dog's instincts had never been wrong before. John could feel the pull, an invisible thread urging him deeper into the mansion's heart. With a slow exhale, he slid the key into the lock of the dusty door, which had been hidden behind an old bookshelf. The lock clicked, and with a soft groan, the door swung open. The room beyond was dark, with only a sliver of light breaking through a crack in the wall. The air felt colder here, a sharp contrast to the stale warmth of the rest of the house. He stepped inside, his boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The room was filled with shelves of books, some in disarray, others carefully stacked, as though waiting for someone to come along and restore order. The walls were lined with old paintings, their frames cracked and peeling, but it was the center of the room that caught his eye, a large wooden chest, its surface etched with intricate patterns. John's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The treasure the house had been hiding all these years. He knelt down in front of the chest, dust swirling around him as he brushed off the layers of grime. There was no lock, no keyhole, just an old latch that had rusted over time. With a grunt, he pulled it open, the sound of the rusty metal scraping against wood filling the room. Inside, there was nothing but a pile of old letters and yellowed papers. John felt a pang of disappointment. Was this really all there was? But as he sifted through the papers, something caught his eye. A small, sealed envelope, tucked away at the very bottom of the chest. It was addressed to him. His name, written in elegant script, stood out against the worn surface of the envelope. He stared at it for a moment, unsure of what to do. But his curiosity got the better of him, and with trembling hands, he broke the seal and pulled out the letter. The paper was thick and heavy, and as he unfolded it, he could see that it was old, the ink faint but still legible. The letter was from his great-grandfather, the man who had once owned this mansion. The words on the page were simple, yet profound. If you are reading this, then the house has chosen you. It has waited for someone like you, someone who understands what it means to protect and preserve what has been lost. This mansion holds secrets, secrets that will change your life. You must seek them out, for they will reveal not just your family's past, but your future as well. Trust the house. Trust the dog. You are never alone. John's hands shook as he finished reading. He looked over at Scout, who was sitting quietly by the door, watching him with an almost knowing gaze. Had the house truly chosen him? And what did it mean by trust the dog? He didn't have time to dwell on it. The letter had given him a purpose, a direction. The secrets of the mansion were waiting to be uncovered, and he had to find them. He carefully folded the letter and placed it in his pocket, then stood up and turned to Scout. "Let's go, boy," he said, his voice determined. "We've got work to do." The two of them left the room, closing the door softly behind them. As they made their way through the mansion, John could feel the house watching him, its secrets just out of reach, waiting to be revealed. The deeper they went, the more the mansion seemed to come alive. It wasn't just a house. It was a living, breathing entity, with a history that stretched far beyond what John could ever imagine. And with each step he took, he knew he was getting closer to uncovering its mysteries. As they walked down a narrow hallway, Scout suddenly stopped again, his ears twitching. John followed his gaze to a painting on the wall, one that he hadn't noticed before. It depicted a woman, dressed in elegant clothing, standing in front of the very mansion they were now in. But it wasn't the woman that caught his attention. It was the strange symbol in the corner of the painting. It was the same symbol that had been etched into the chest they had just opened. The same symbol that had been on the key. John's pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. The house, the key, the symbol, it was all connected. And he was about to unravel the story of a lifetime. John stood frozen in the hallway, his eyes locked on the painting before him. The woman in the portrait, with her serene expression and elegant gown, seemed to be staring back at him. Her eyes, though painted, felt alive, filled with secrets that had been buried for decades. What was it about this painting that made him feel so uneasy? As his gaze shifted to the corner of the frame, his heart raced. There it was again. The strange symbol that had been etched into the chest, and the key, now staring at him in vivid color. It was the same as the one on the map he had found earlier, a symbol that seemed to connect everything in the house. With a deep breath, he stepped closer to the painting. Scout, his loyal German shepherd, stayed by his side, his ears flat against his head, sensing his owner's unease. John reached out, his fingers trembling as they grazed the surface of the painting. The air around him seemed to change, a low hum filling the room, almost as though the house was reacting to his touch. Without thinking, he pressed his palm against the frame. A soft click echoed through the room. The painting moved. Slowly, the frame shifted to reveal a hidden door behind it. The door was small, barely noticeable against the wall, but it was there, beckoning him. Without hesitating, John pushed the door open, his heart pounding in his chest. On the other side, the room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of a lantern flickering in the corner. The space was narrow, lined with shelves filled with old books and trinkets, each one covered in layers of dust. But what caught his attention wasn't the books. It was the large stone pedestal standing in the center of the room. Resting atop the pedestal was a small, ornate box, its surface decorated with the same symbol he had seen earlier. This was it, the key to the mansion's secrets. His pulse quickened as he stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the box. It was almost as though the box was calling to him, waiting for him to unlock its mysteries. As he approached, Scout growled softly, his body tense, but John reassured him with a gentle pat on the head. "It's okay, boy," he whispered, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. There was something ancient about this room, something that made his skin crawl, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. Reaching out, John slowly lifted the box from the pedestal. It was surprisingly heavy, the metal cool to the touch. The moment it was in his hands, the room seemed to come alive. A low rumble echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion, like a distant thunderstorm. John flinched, looking around, but the room remained unchanged. The sound faded, but it left him with an unsettling feeling, as though the house had just acknowledged him. As he opened the box, his breath caught in his throat. Inside, there was a single letter, written in the same elegant script as the one he had found earlier. His name was scrawled across the top. He unfolded the letter carefully, feeling the weight of its importance. To the one who seeks the truth, the letter began. You have found the heart of the house. This mansion is not merely a building. It is a gateway to something far greater. It has been waiting for you, for someone with the strength to uncover its secrets. The symbol you have seen is the key to the mansion's power. It is the mark of those who came before you, those who guarded the legacy of this place. But you must be cautious, for the house will test you. It will show you things you may not want to see. The path ahead is treacherous, but with it comes the promise of a new beginning. John's hands shook as he read the final words. Trust the house. Trust your instincts. And above all, trust the dog. He looked down at Scout, who was sitting silently beside him, watching him with calm, knowing eyes. Was this why Scout had always been by his side? Was the dog more than just a companion? Did he have a role to play in this? The letter didn't offer any more answers, but it gave him a sense of purpose. The mansion had chosen him for a reason, and now it was up to him to uncover its mysteries. He carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the box, feeling the weight of the decision he had just made. The house had chosen him, and now there was no turning back. John stood still for a moment, the weight of the letter pressing in his hands. Scout, always attuned to his emotions, sat patiently by his side, his head tilted slightly, as if he understood the magnitude of what had just been revealed. The mansion, with all its secrets and mysteries, had chosen John, and now, the path ahead was his to uncover. He could feel the weight of history in the air around him, the echoes of those who had walked these halls before him. The mansion was more than just a house. It was a living, breathing entity, and John was its newest guardian. He took a deep breath, tucking the letter back into the box, and carefully closed it. As he stood, his eyes scanned the room once more. The shelves, lined with dusty books and forgotten trinkets, seemed to watch him, waiting for his next move. The faint glow from the lantern flickered, casting shadows on the walls, and for a moment, John felt a deep sense of foreboding. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a sense of determination. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to turn back now. The house had given him a purpose, and now it was time to fulfill it. He turned to Scout, who was still sitting by his side, watching him with a calm intensity. Let's see what else this house has in store for us, John muttered under his breath. As they left the hidden room, the soft creak of the floorboards echoed through the house, a reminder that they were not alone. The mansion seemed to follow their every move, the walls closing in around them as if it were alive, watching and waiting. They made their way through the dimly lit hallway, the faint sounds of creaking would filling the silence. As they turned a corner, John noticed something odd. A door, one he had not seen before, stood at the end of the hall. It was different from the others in the house. It wasn't covered in dust or cobwebs. In fact, it looked almost pristine, as if it had been recently cleaned or touched. His heart raced as he approached the door, his hand instinctively reaching for the doorknob. But before he could turn it, Scout growled low in his throat, his body tense and alert. John paused, glancing down at his dog. There was something about this door, something that didn't sit right with him. What is it, boy? John whispered, crouching down to Scout's level. The dog's amber eyes met his, filled with a deep understanding. John had always trusted Scout's instincts, and this was no different. With a deep breath, he turned the doorknob. The door swung open with a soft, smooth motion, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of old wood and forgotten memories filled the space. The room was filled with antique furniture, most of it covered in sheets. But in the center of the room, illuminated by a single beam of moonlight that filtered through the narrow window, stood an ornate mirror. It was framed in dark, polished wood, its surface gleaming despite the years of neglect. John felt a chill run down his spine as he stepped closer to the mirror. There was something about it that drew him in, a pull he couldn't explain. As he gazed into the glass, he saw not his own reflection, but a different image entirely. He saw the mansion, not as it was now, but as it had been long ago, grand, majestic, and full of life. In the reflection, he saw people, figures moving through the halls, laughing, talking, and living. It was as if the mirror was a window into the past, a glimpse of a time long gone. But then, the image shifted. The people in the reflection grew silent, their faces turning to stone. The mansion began to decay, the once grand halls crumbling, the laughter fading into the distance. The vision became darker, the air heavy with a sense of impending doom. Suddenly, the reflection shifted once more, and John saw a figure standing in the doorway of the room. The figure was tall, with broad shoulders and a face that was hidden in shadow. The figure's eyes were locked on John's, and for a brief moment, John felt a deep sense of fear. The figure reached out, its hand pressing against the glass of the mirror. John recoiled, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt an overwhelming sense of danger, a warning that he couldn't ignore. But before he could react, the vision disappeared, and the mirror returned to its original state. John took a step back, his breath shallow. Scout, sensing his unease, stepped closer, nuzzling his leg. John knelt down to pat him, trying to steady his racing heart. "What was that, boy?" he whispered. He didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing for certain. The mansion was hiding something, something far more dangerous than he had anticipated. The house had given him a purpose, but now it seemed to be warning him of the dangers that lay ahead. Whatever secrets it held, they were not meant to be uncovered easily. John's breath was heavy as he stepped back from the mirror, the chilling vision still fresh in his mind. The shadowy figure that had reached toward him lingered in his thoughts. What did it mean? Was it a warning or a sign of something deeper, something hidden beneath the mansion's decaying walls? Scout, ever watchful, stood close by, his eyes scanning the room, as if he sensed the unease that was creeping into John's thoughts. The house felt colder now, more oppressive, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for him to make his next move. John took a deep breath and turned away from the mirror. He could feel the weight of the mansion pressing down on him, its secrets pulling him further into its grasp. This house, with all its strange visions and cryptic messages, was no ordinary place. It had a life of its own, and now, it seemed to have chosen him. He walked back into the hallway, the soft creak of the floorboards beneath his boots the only sound in the silence. The house was quiet, but it was not peaceful. It felt as though the walls were alive, watching him, listening to every step he took. As he walked, he found himself drawn toward the library, the room where he had first uncovered the box. He wasn't sure why, but something about that room called to him, as though there was more to be discovered. When he reached the door, he hesitated for a moment, wondering what he might find inside. The library had already given him so much: old books, family history, the strange box. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he had missed. He pushed open the door, and as it creaked on its hinges, he was met with the familiar scent of old paper and dust. The room was just as it had been before, but now, John noticed something new. On the far wall, behind the shelves of books, there was a large, ornate painting. He had seen it before, but something about it was different now. The painting, which had once seemed ordinary, now felt alive, its colors more vibrant, its details sharper. It depicted a man, standing tall, dressed in the same elegant clothing as the woman from the other painting. His face was obscured, but his posture was commanding, strong. The symbol, the same one that had appeared in the mirror, was emblazoned on the man's chest. John's heart skipped a beat. He had seen this symbol before, and now it seemed to be everywhere. It was in the mirror, on the chest, on the key, and now, it was here, painted onto the wall of the library. What did it mean? What was its connection to the mansion? As John stepped closer to the painting, Scout growled softly, his body tense. The air in the room seemed to shift, the temperature dropping once again. John could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. This room, this painting, it felt like the key to everything. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and touched the frame of the painting. The moment his fingers brushed against the wood, a low rumble echoed through the mansion, vibrating the floor beneath him. He froze. The house was alive, he could feel it. It was reacting to his touch, to his presence. The rumbling grew louder, and for a moment, John thought the walls might collapse around him. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sound stopped. The room fell silent once more. John stood there, his heart pounding in his chest, unsure of what had just happened. But one thing was clear, the mansion was not just a house. It was something far more powerful, far more dangerous. It was a keeper of secrets, a place that held knowledge and history long forgotten. And now, it seemed to be testing him. As John stepped back from the painting, he noticed something else, an inscription, faint and barely visible, carved into the wooden frame. He leaned in closer, squinting to make out the words. It read, "The truth lies within. Seek and you shall find, but only if you are ready." John felt a shiver run down his spine. The message was clear, the house was offering him a choice. He could continue down this path, uncovering its secrets, or he could turn back and leave it all behind. But there was no turning back now. He had already come too far. He had already felt the pull of the mansion's mysteries. And with that, John made his decision. He would seek the truth. He would uncover the secrets the house held, no matter where they led. As he turned away from the painting, a new sense of purpose filled him. The house had chosen him for a reason. It was time to embrace that purpose and discover what lay hidden beneath the surface of this ancient mansion. He looked down at Scout, who was watching him with a quiet understanding. Together, they would uncover the mansion's deepest secrets, and with each step, they would get closer to the truth. The mansion had already shown him glimpses of its past, and now it was time to uncover its future. John's footsteps echoed down the dim hallway as he turned away from the painting, his mind racing. The inscription on the frame, "The truth lies within. Seek and you shall find, but only if you are ready," haunted him. What did it mean? What was he about to uncover in this mansion that had stood silent for so long? The air felt heavier now, as though the house itself was watching him, waiting for him to take the next step. He glanced down at Scout, who was trailing behind, his ears alert and his body tense. The dog seemed to sense it too. Something was changing in the mansion, and they were both caught in its grip. They continued down the hallway, the silence oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. Each step felt like an invitation deeper into the unknown. The mansion was no longer just a place. It was a journey, one that John was reluctant to take, but could not escape. The closer he got to uncovering the truth, the more it felt like a dangerous game, but there was no turning back. As they reached the end of the hallway, John paused. A door, one he had never noticed before, stood in front of him. It was smaller than the others, its wood darker, almost black. A strange, intricate carving was etched into the surface, and John felt a pull toward it, as if the door was calling to him. Without a second thought, he reached out and turned the handle. The door creaked open, and John stepped inside. The room was small, its air thick with the scent of ancient dust and something faintly metallic. At first glance, it seemed like just another forgotten space in the mansion, empty, save for the clutter of discarded furniture and old relics. But as John's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw it. A large, wooden chest sat in the corner of the room, its surface carved with the same symbol he had seen in the paintings, on the key, and in the mirror. The chest was old, but it looked well, cared for, as though it had been untouched for years, waiting for someone to come and open it. John's heart raced. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. As he approached the chest, Scout growled softly, his body tense. John hesitated for a moment, but the pull was too strong. He couldn't stop now. He knelt down in front of the chest, brushing away the dust with his hand. The carvings on the surface seemed to glow faintly, as if the chest were alive, and John could feel his pulse quicken. He carefully lifted the lid, and as it creaked open, a faint light filled the room. Inside the chest, There was no gold, no jewels, nothing that seemed like a traditional treasure. Instead, there was a collection of old books, worn and yellowed with age. The books were arranged carefully, each one seeming to hold its own secret. John's fingers trembled as he picked up the first book. It was heavy, bound in leather that had long since darkened with time. The title, embossed in gold on the cover, read The Legacy of the House. His breath caught in his throat as he opened the first page. The handwriting inside was elegant, flowing, as though it had been written by someone with great care. The pages were filled with stories of the mansion's past, of the family that had lived here before, of the riches they had hidden, and of the curse that had followed them. But the further John read, the more he realized that these weren't just stories. They were instructions, clues to unlocking the mansion's ultimate secret. The books detailed the history of the mansion's true power, a power that had been passed down through generations. The mansion was more than just a home. It was a vessel, a keeper of secrets, and whoever held the key could unlock its unimaginable potential. But there was a price. The curse, mentioned in the letters, had been passed down with the mansion's power. Whoever sought its truth would have to face the consequences. The curse was not something that could be escaped. John felt a chill run down his spine. This was more than he had bargained for. He had come here seeking answers, but what he was uncovering was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. As he continued reading, he came across a name, one that sent a shiver of recognition through him. It was his great-grandfather's name, the same man who had owned this mansion. The letters described how he had sealed away the mansion's power, hiding it in the very walls of the house to prevent anyone from abusing it. But John was beginning to understand. The mansion had chosen him, and the key to unlocking its power was now in his hands. But the more he read, the more he realized that the mansion was no ordinary place. It had been built on the bones of secrets long buried, and now, those secrets were calling to him. The legacy was his to bear, but the question remained. Was he ready to face the consequences of unlocking it? John closed the book, his mind racing. The path ahead was clear. He had come to the mansion seeking answers, but now he was about to face the truth of its past, a truth that would change everything. The mansion had tested him, and now it was time to discover what it truly wanted from him. As John stood, he looked down at Scout, who was still by his side, his eyes full of quiet understanding. Together, they would face whatever the mansion had in store for them. John stood in the dim light of the library, the weight of the books in his hands heavy with their meaning. The mansion had revealed so much to him already, but the deeper he dug, the more it seemed to ask of him. The letter from his great-grandfather, the warning of a curse, the power hidden within the mansion, all of it swirled in his mind like a storm. He had come to this place looking for answers, but now, with each page he turned, the questions only grew. The books described rituals, cryptic symbols, and ancient practices, all pointing toward the mansion's true purpose. It wasn't just a house. It was a fortress, built to protect a power so great that it could reshape the world itself. But this power, his great-grandfather had written, was not meant to fall into the wrong hands. The curse that plagued the mansion was there to ensure that no one, not even a family member, could abuse what lay hidden inside. John felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. The mansion had chosen him. He didn't know why, but he could feel it in his bones. And now, it was up to him to decide whether to unlock its full potential or seal it away forever. But something in the back of his mind kept whispering that the mansion would not allow him to leave easily. It had already started to show him glimpses of its power, the strange visions in the mirror, the figure in the doorway. And now, as he turned the pages of the book, he felt the air around him change. The house was shifting, reacting to his presence, as if it were alive and waiting for him to make a decision. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, breaking John's concentration. He turned quickly, his heart racing. Scout, who had been lying quietly beside him, lifted his head, his ears twitching as he stood alert. John felt a wave of unease wash over him. He wasn't alone in the house. As he made his way to the hallway, the floor creaked beneath his feet. The house seemed to grow darker, the shadows stretching long and deep. The faint glow of a lantern flickered at the end of the hall, casting a soft light over the entrance to a room he had not noticed before. It was different from the others, uninviting, as though it had been hidden away for a reason. John hesitated but felt the pull again, a quiet but insistent voice urging him to enter. With Scout by his side, he walked toward the door, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Just as he touched it, a cold wind swept through the hallway, rattling the windows. The house seemed to groan in protest, but John turned the knob and stepped inside. The room was small, its walls lined with shelves filled with dusty artifacts and old paintings. But it wasn't the room itself that caught his attention. It was the strange, glowing object sitting on a pedestal in the center. It was an orb, made of a dark, translucent material, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light. John couldn't look away. As he stepped closer, he felt an undeniable pull, as if the orb was calling to him. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling as it neared the object. The moment his fingers brushed against the surface, a flash of light filled the room, blinding him for a moment. When his vision cleared, the orb was no longer glowing. Instead, it had transformed into a map, an ancient map, its surface cracked and worn. The map depicted the mansion, but it was unlike any version John had seen before. It showed hidden rooms, secret passages, and chambers that were not on any of the floor plans he had discovered. At the center of the map was a symbol he recognized immediately. It was the same symbol that had appeared in the paintings, the key, the books, and even the mirror. It was the mark of the mansion's true power. The map seemed to be guiding him, showing him a path that no one had walked for generations. But as John traced the lines of the map with his fingers, he felt a presence behind him. He turned quickly, but there was no one there. The room was still, the air heavy with anticipation. He felt the weight of the mansion bearing down on him. The orb, the map, it was all connected. This was the moment. The mansion had chosen him, and now it was time to uncover what had been hidden for so long. As he examined the map further, he noticed that it led deep into the heart of the mansion, to a place that had been sealed off, a place that no one had entered in years. This was the key. He knew it. But as he looked back at the map, a new fear crept into his chest. The final destination, the place where the mansion's true power was hidden, was marked with a single word, unforgiven. The word sent a chill down John's spine. What did it mean? What would he find there? Scout whined softly at his side, as if sensing his apprehension. John took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He couldn't stop now. The mansion had shown him the way. It had led him here for a reason, and it was up to him to finish what had been started so many years ago. With the map in hand and Scout by his side, John made his decision. He would follow the path. He would uncover the truth, and he would face whatever lay ahead, no matter the cost. John's heart pounded as he followed the ancient map, the path ahead now clearer than ever. The map had led him to a hidden part of the mansion, a place that had long been sealed away, forgotten by time. The word, unforgiven, lingered in his mind like a dark omen. What did it mean? What could possibly await him in a place marked by such a word? He glanced down at Scout, who walked closely by his side, his body tense, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the mansion, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. The mansion had been alive ever since John set foot in it, its walls whispering, its floors creaking in response to his every move. Now, the house felt like it was closing in on him, urging him forward, pushing him toward whatever secrets lay hidden in its depths. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the mansion, the soft glow of the lantern casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The sounds of their footsteps echoed, bouncing off the narrow hallways and thick wooden beams. John's pulse quickened with every step, a mix of fear and excitement churning within him. The mansion seemed to hum, as if it were alive, breathing, waiting for him to unlock its final secret. He reached a large wooden door, its surface covered in intricate carvings, the same symbol appearing once again, this time larger, more pronounced. It was the key, the mansion's mark, the sign that he had come to the right place. John reached out to touch the door, his fingers grazing the rough surface. The moment he did, the door creaked open, as if it had been waiting for him to arrive. Inside, the room was dark, the air thick with dust and a musty scent. The only light came from the faint glow of the lantern in John's hand. The room was large, its walls lined with stone, and at the center stood a stone altar, its surface covered in ancient symbols. In front of the altar, a large stone chest sat, its surface adorned with the same symbol John had seen everywhere in the mansion. His breath caught in his throat. This was it. The final secret. The key to everything. He had found it. He stepped closer, his heart racing. But as he did, the air in the room shifted. It grew colder still, and a low rumble reverberated through the walls, as if the mansion itself were awakening. The chest began to glow, the light pulsing in rhythm with John's heartbeat. He hesitated for a moment, unsure if he was ready to face whatever lay within. But the mansion had brought him here, had guided him to this very moment. There was no turning back. With shaking hands, he reached for the chest and slowly lifted the heavy lid. Inside, there was no treasure, no jewels, no gold. Instead, there were ancient scrolls, their edges frayed with age, the ink on them faded and barely legible. As John reached for one of the scrolls, a voice, deep and rumbling, echoed through the room. "You seek the truth," the voice said, its tone like thunder, shaking the very foundations of the mansion. "But the truth comes at a cost." John froze, his eyes darting around the room, searching for the source of the voice. But there was no one there, only the empty stone walls and the altar in front of him. The voice continued, its words carrying a weight that made John's chest tighten. "You cannot undo what has been done. The mansion's power has been sealed for generations, and now it is yours to claim. But know this, the cost is your soul." The words struck John like a bolt of lightning. His heart raced, his breath quickened. The cost was his soul? Was this some sort of test? He had been chosen for something. That much was clear, but this was more than he had bargained for. He glanced down at Scout, who stood by his side, watching him with unwavering loyalty. Whatever this power was, whatever the mansion held, John knew one thing for sure. He couldn't face it alone. The mansion had brought him here for a reason, but the cost of unlocking its secrets was greater than he had ever imagined. And now, as the voice continued to echo in his mind, John had to make a choice. He could walk away, leave the mansion behind, and never look back. Or he could claim the power, face whatever consequences awaited him, and accept the cost. John stood still, his mind racing, the weight of the decision settling in his chest. He had come this far, had uncovered so much already, and yet, he knew there was more to this story. The mansion had shown him the truth, but the truth was not always kind. With one last look at Scout, John made his choice. He would face the mansion's power, whatever it was, and whatever the cost. There was no turning back now. He reached for the scroll, his hand trembling. As his fingers brushed the ancient parchment, the room seemed to shake once more, the light from the chest growing brighter and brighter, until it engulfed the room in a blinding white light. The mansion had spoken, and now, it was time for John to face the truth. The light from the chest consumed the room, bright and blinding, filling every corner of the dark stone chamber with its brilliance. John shielded his eyes, his hand still gripping the ancient scroll. The voice that had spoken to him echoed again in his mind, deep and resonant, warning him of the cost. The mansion's power has been sealed for generations, and now it is yours to claim. But know this, the cost is your soul. The words hung in the air, heavy with their meaning. John's heart raced as he stood, caught in the glow, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Was he truly prepared to pay the price for the power that lay before him? His thoughts flashed to everything he had learned. The mansion's true purpose, the hidden history, the curse that had plagued his family for generations. This place was more than just a house. It was a living, breathing entity, and it had chosen him. But what did that choice truly mean? The orb on the pedestal, the scrolls in the chest, the ancient symbols, all of it led to one thing, the mansion's power. But the mansion had made it clear. If he sought that power, he would pay a price. His soul. The room around him seemed to pulse, as though the very walls were alive with energy, reacting to the decision he was about to make. He glanced down at Scout, who stood beside him, watching with calm, amber eyes. John's loyal dog had been with him through thick and thin, through the darkest days of war, and now, it was with him here, in the heart of the mansion. Could he really do this alone? Did he need to face whatever was waiting for him here? No. He knew Scout's presence was more than just a comfort. It was a sign. The house had chosen them both, together. "We're in this together, Scout," John whispered, though. He wasn't entirely sure who he was reassuring, himself or the dog. He turned back to the chest, his fingers still tight around the scroll. The mansion had brought him here for a reason. The cost was high, but the potential was greater. It was not just about power, it was about redemption. The redemption of his family, of the house, of himself. With one last look at the scroll, John made his decision. He would face the consequences. Slowly, he unfurled the scroll, his heart pounding in his chest as he read the ancient text. The words on the page were clear, and yet, they carried a weight he hadn't expected. The power of the mansion lies within the bloodline. The one who seeks the truth must prove their worth. Only then can the secrets of the house be unlocked. John's breath caught in his throat. The bloodline. His bloodline. This was more than just an inheritance. It was a test. The mansion had chosen him, but now it required him to prove his worth. It was asking for more than just his presence. It was asking for his very essence, his very soul. John looked down at Scout once more. The dog seemed to understand, his eyes never leaving John's face. "Let's do this," John said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. He placed the scroll back in the chest, feeling the weight of his decision settle on his shoulders. The moment he closed the chest, the glow from the orb seemed to dim, and the room grew silent. But that silence was short-lived. The walls began to tremble, the ground beneath his feet vibrating with an intense energy. The mansion had awakened, and its power was now fully unleashed. John could feel it, the energy coursing through the air, through his very bones. It was as if the house had become one with him, its power now intertwined with his own. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. The mansion was testing him. It had always been testing him. But now, there was no going back. The path ahead was clear. He had come here to find the truth, to unlock the mansion's secrets, and now he was about to discover exactly what that truth was. As the trembling of the floor grew stronger, John heard a voice once more, but this time, it was not deep or rumbling. It was calm, almost soothing, like a whisper in the wind. "You have proven your worth. Now, the power of the mansion is yours. But remember, the cost has been paid." John's heart skipped a beat. The voice was the same one that had spoken earlier, but now, it seemed different. It was not threatening, it was acknowledging his choice. The mansion's power had been unleashed, and now it was his to wield. But what did that truly mean? What had he unleashed? As the light around him faded, John felt a deep connection to the mansion, to its history, and to the power that lay within it. He knew that this was only the beginning. The mansion had shown him its secrets, but it had also shown him the consequences of unlocking those secrets. Now, he had to decide what to do with that power. The mansion had given him everything, but it had also taken something from him. His soul. The price had been paid, and now, the future was his to shape. He took a final glance around the room, the glow of the orb still lingering in the air. With Scout by his side, John stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the power of the mansion, and whatever the cost might be. The air in the mansion grew heavier, thick with the weight of John's decision. The voice had spoken the truth. He had paid the price, and now, the mansion's power was his to wield. The silence that followed was deafening, and John could feel the weight of that power pressing down on him, heavy like the old, crumbling stone walls that surrounded him. It was as though the house itself was watching, waiting to see what he would do with what he had unlocked. As he stood there, in the center of the room, the light from the orb faded, and the world around him seemed to return to its normal state, quiet, still, and lifeless. But John knew that the mansion was far from ordinary. It had chosen him for a reason. The house had shown him the truth, but it had also made it clear that his journey was far from over. The power that flowed through him was palpable now, like electricity running through his veins. He could feel it in every corner of the house, every creaking floorboard and shifting shadow. He wasn't sure how to use it, how to control it, but he knew that he would need to learn quickly. The mansion had given him everything, but with that came the responsibility to guard its secrets, to protect its power from falling into the wrong hands. With a deep breath, he turned to Scout, who was standing quietly at his side, his eyes watching John intently. The dog seemed to sense that the journey ahead would not be easy. John's grip on the ancient scroll tightened as he looked around the room. The mansion was full of secrets, secrets that had been hidden for centuries. But now, those secrets were no longer just whispers in the dark. They were his to uncover. He could feel the mansion's energy humming beneath his feet, vibrating through the air like a constant pulse, waiting to be harnessed. The question, as always, was how. John could feel the weight of history bearing down on him. The mansion had been abandoned for so long, its true purpose buried beneath layers of dust and time. But now, it was awake, and he was its keeper. He had already made his choice, but the true test had only just begun. The mansion had shown him glimpses of what lay ahead, the power, the legacy, the curse, but now it was up to him to navigate the path. He wasn't alone. Scout was with him, his loyal companion in this strange, new reality. But even with the dog by his side, John knew that the journey ahead would test him in ways he couldn't predict. The cost had been paid, and the mansion's secrets were now his to uncover. But with each revelation, more questions arose. What would happen if he unlocked everything? What if the power he now held was too great, too dangerous to control? The mansion had always been a place of mystery, of hidden truths and ancient power. But now, it was a place of responsibility. It was up to John to decide what to do with what he had learned. Would he use the power to change the world, or would he protect the mansion, keeping its secrets hidden forever? The choice was his, but he knew that the consequences of his actions would be felt far beyond the walls of the house. As John moved toward the door, he felt a strange sense of resolve wash over him. The mansion had tested him, but now, it was time for him to test the mansion. He stepped out of the room, the sound of his boots echoing in the empty hallway. The mansion had chosen him, and now, he would make his mark on it. The path ahead was uncertain, but John knew one thing. He couldn't turn back. The mansion had given him its power, its truth, and now, it was time for him to decide what to do with it. The future of the mansion, and possibly the world, was in his hands. John's footsteps were steady as he moved through the mansion, each step deliberate, as if he was preparing for the next phase of his journey. The house felt different now. He could feel the power within its walls more acutely, almost as if it were aware of him, waiting for him to make his move. The mansion had chosen him, and now he had to decide what to do with the power it had granted him. The weight of his decision was immense, pressing on him like a tangible force. The walls seemed to close in around him, the silence of the house amplifying every thought in his mind. Scout walked beside him, his eyes sharp, his body moving with purpose. The dog had been with him through everything, through the hardships of war, through the loneliness of the years that followed, and now, through the mysteries of the mansion. Together, they had uncovered so many secrets, but it was clear that the greatest challenge lay ahead. As he walked deeper into the mansion, John's mind raced. He had already unlocked so much, but there was still so much more to understand. The mansion was a place of power, a place of history, and now, it was in his hands. But what was he supposed to do with it? He had read the books, studied the symbols, and uncovered the ancient rituals, but there was no guide for what came next. The mansion had shown him the path, but the steps were unclear. The house had asked him to prove his worth, and he had done that. But the cost was still unknown. The price had been his soul, but what did that mean? He could feel the power coursing through him. But was it truly his to command? Or had he become a pawn in a much larger game? As he walked, he began to sense the presence of the mansion more acutely. The house seemed to breathe with him, shifting and groaning as if reacting to his thoughts. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the mansion itself was waiting for him to unlock the final secret. John stopped in front of a large wooden door, its surface covered in intricate carvings. It was unlike any other door in the mansion, and he knew without a doubt that this was where he needed to go. The door was calling to him, its energy vibrating with the same power he now felt within himself. He reached out and placed his hand on the door, the wood cool beneath his palm. The moment he touched it, the mansion seemed to shudder, and the door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, there was a single pedestal in the center of the room, and atop it lay a book, its cover bound in what appeared to be old leather. The room was silent, and the air felt charged, as if the book was waiting for him. As John approached the pedestal, he felt a rush of energy surge through him, stronger than anything he had experienced before. The book seemed to pulse with life, and as he reached for it, the room seemed to grow even darker, the shadows stretching toward him. He took the book in his hands, its weight heavy, its presence undeniable. The cover was embossed with the same symbol that had appeared throughout the mansion, the mark of the house's power. With a deep breath, John opened the book, the pages crackling with age. The words on the pages seemed to shimmer, as if the book was alive, responding to his touch. As he read, the words became clearer, their meaning unfolding before him. The book spoke of the true origin of the mansion, of the bloodline that had built it and protected its secrets for generations. It revealed the power that lay within the mansion, power that had been hidden away for centuries, waiting for the right person to unlock it. The mansion had been built to house the power of the ancients, and it had chosen John to carry that power forward. But with it came a warning. The book spoke of a curse that had followed the mansion for generations, a curse that would only be lifted once the power was passed on to someone worthy. The curse was tied to the house, to its very foundation. It was a burden that no one could escape, not even the bloodline itself. The mansion had chosen him, but it had also placed a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. John closed the book slowly, the weight of its contents pressing down on him. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with the presence of the mansion's power. The voice that had spoken to him earlier echoed in his mind once more. You have unlocked the truth, but you must decide whether to bear the burden or let it go. The words lingered in the air, hanging between him and the mansion, waiting for him to make a decision. John stood there for a long moment, the silence around him deafening. The mansion had shown him its power, its secrets, but now it was up to him to decide what to do with it. He could keep the power, use it to shape the future, or he could seal it away, keeping it hidden from the world. The decision was his. The cost had been paid, but the consequences of his choice would be felt for generations to come. With a deep breath, John closed his eyes and made his decision. He had come this far, and there was no turning back. The mansion had chosen him for a reason, and now, it was time to claim his place in its long history. John stood in the center of the room, the book heavy in his hands. The mansion had given him its truth, its power, but it had also placed a heavy weight on his shoulders. The voice had spoken to him once more, urging him to decide whether to bear the burden of the mansion's power or to seal it away forever. The air in the room felt charged, almost electric, as if the house itself was waiting for him to make his final choice. The secrets of the mansion, the legacy of his bloodline, the curse that had followed his family, all of it rested on him now. Scout stood beside him, as always, his amber eyes watching John with a quiet understanding, as if he too felt the weight of the decision. The dog had been with him through so much already, through the darkest days of his past, and now, he was with John in the mansion's final test. John knew he couldn't do this alone. This house had chosen him, but it was more than just his decision to make. It was a decision that would affect not only his future but the future of his family, the mansion, and the world around him. The power that lay within these walls was immense, but so was the cost. He had already paid a price, his soul, but now the mansion was asking him to pay even more. Could he truly carry the burden of this power? Could he use it for good, or would it consume him as it had consumed those before him? The thought made his chest tighten. He had never wanted power. He had never sought it. But the mansion had called to him, and now it was time for him to claim his place. He had been given the tools, the knowledge, but it was up to him to decide how to wield them. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to quiet the whirlwind of thoughts in his head. The mansion had shown him what lay ahead, but it had also shown him the darkness that could follow. The power was not a gift, it was a responsibility. And with responsibility came sacrifice. He had come this far, but could he truly embrace the role the mansion had set before him? The light from the orb seemed to flicker, casting long shadows in the room. He opened his eyes, and in that moment, he understood. The mansion had given him the choice to shape the future, to break the cycle of destruction that had plagued his bloodline for generations. It was not a choice between good and evil. It was a choice between embracing the power and the responsibility that came with it or walking away, leaving the mansion and its secrets to decay. John knew that if he chose to walk away, the mansion would fall into darkness once more, its power left untapped, its secrets forgotten. The curse would continue to haunt his family, and the mansion's true purpose would remain a mystery. But if he chose to embrace the power, he would become the guardian of the mansion's legacy, the keeper of its secrets. The burden would be great, but the potential to protect the world from the mansion's power, to guide it into a new era, was even greater. The decision was his. He looked down at Scout, who was sitting by his side, his tail swishing gently, his eyes filled with quiet confidence. The dog had always been there, a steady presence through all of life's trials. And now, as he stood at the precipice of the greatest choice of his life, John knew that he was not alone. He had Scout by his side, and that was all he needed. He took a deep breath, his decision clear. He would embrace the power of the mansion, but he would do so with a sense of responsibility, with the understanding that it was not his to wield lightly. The mansion had chosen him, and now, it was time for him to step into the role it had set before him. He had come to this place seeking answers, but now he would shape the answers for the future. With one final look around the room, John stepped forward, feeling the weight of the mansion's power settle within him. The house seemed to respond, the energy in the air shifting, as though it was acknowledging his decision. The mansion was no longer just a place. It was a part of him now, and he was a part of it. The journey ahead would be difficult, but John was ready. He had accepted his role as the keeper of the mansion's secrets, the protector of its power, and the guardian of its legacy. The house had chosen him, and now it was time to fulfill the destiny that had been written in the walls of the mansion long ago. John stood at the heart of the mansion, the weight of his decision settling deeply within him. The house, now a part of him, seemed to breathe with him, its power pulsing through the air. He had embraced the mansion's legacy, accepting both the gift and the curse that came with it. The journey had brought him to this moment, to this place, and there was no turning back. Scout, his ever-faithful companion, sat by his side, his eyes reflecting the quiet understanding that had always existed between them. The bond between them was stronger than ever, and together, they would face whatever the future held. The mansion had offered him the power to shape its fate, and now, as its guardian, it was his duty to ensure that power was never abused. He knew that the responsibility before him was immense, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that he had long been searching for. The mansion, with all its mysteries and secrets, had chosen him to be its protector, to unlock its potential and guard it from those who might seek to use it for their own gain. The energy that flowed through the house was now his to command, but it was a delicate balance, one that could easily tip into chaos if not handled with care. John's mind wandered back to everything he had learned, the history of his family, the curse that had followed them, and the immense power that lay within these walls. He had come here seeking answers, but now, he had found something far greater, a responsibility, a legacy, and a purpose. The mansion was not just a home. It was a living entity, one that had witnessed the rise and fall of generations, and now, it was his to protect. As John walked through the mansion, he felt the weight of its history pressing down on him. Each step he took seemed to echo through the halls, as if the house itself was watching, waiting for him to fulfill his role. The rooms that once felt dark and foreboding now seemed alive, filled with the potential of what was to come. He had unlocked its secrets, and now, he could feel its power coursing through every corner of the house. But it wasn't just about power. It was about preservation, about keeping the mansion's truth hidden from the world until it was ready. The curse, though still present, no longer held the same grip on him. He had broken the cycle, but only by accepting the responsibility that came with the mansion's power. The burden was heavy, but it was his to bear. As the days passed, John grew more accustomed to the mansion's rhythms. He learned to listen to its whispers, to understand its needs. The house, though vast and mysterious, had a language of its own, one that John was learning to speak. He would walk its halls, sometimes guided by nothing more than a feeling, and other times, by the flicker of light or the creak of the floorboards beneath him. Each time he stepped into a new room, it felt as if he were unlocking another layer of the mansion's soul. But even as John began to settle into his role as the mansion's guardian, he knew that challenges lay ahead. The power that he now held was immense, and there would be those who sought it. He had already faced one test, but he knew that others would come, testing his resolve, his ability to control the mansion's power. He could already feel the pull of those who would seek to use the mansion for their own gain. But John was no longer the man who had stumbled into this place, seeking answers. He was now the mansion's protector, and he would not let its power fall into the wrong hands. He had made his decision, and he would stand firm in it. As time went on, John began to realize that the mansion's power was not just about strength. It was about balance. It was about understanding the fragile nature of the world around him and using the mansion's gifts to protect it. He had the power to shape the future, but he knew that he could not do it alone. Scout was by his side, as always, a symbol of the loyalty and strength he would need to face the challenges ahead. Together, they would keep the mansion's power safe, hidden from those who would use it for evil. The mansion had chosen him, and now, he would fulfill his role. The legacy of his family, the mansion's secrets, and the power that lay within its walls would all be protected by him. And as the mansion's guardian, John knew that the future was his to shape, one step at a time, one decision at a time. The mansion was no longer a mystery. It was home, and it was his to protect. Experience the intense journey of a veteran as he uncovers hidden secrets in an old mansion, exploring power, legacy, and the cost of truth. This is a story that blends mystery and suspense with deep emotional depth, as our veteran protagonist faces challenges that test his courage, resolve, and sense of self. As he unravels the mansion's dark history, this veteran's story takes unexpected turns, revealing a life-altering responsibility and an ancient curse. With his loyal dog by his side, the veteran must navigate through hidden chambers, ancient scrolls, and the mansion's power that has chosen him as its protector. The stakes are high, as he faces the weight of a legacy that could change the world, but not without consequences. Through each revelation, this veteran's story takes on a profound meaning, as he learns that the greatest battles are often fought within. As he steps deeper into the mansion's mysteries, the veteran discovers that the past holds the key to his future, and he must decide whether to embrace the power or let it slip away forever. The price is steep, and the mansion's true intentions become clearer with every passing moment. In this veteran's story, the path to self-discovery, duty, and sacrifice is paved with powerful choices that lead to an unforgettable conclusion. With themes of mystery, power, and redemption, this veteran's story proves that sometimes the most difficult journey is the one that leads to understanding and acceptance of one's destiny.